I remember a colleague, this is going back years ago. I was in radio in Ottawa, and he made a comment that there was objective truth. And there were a pile of other people in the newsroom that couldn't believe that he said that. And they said, no, there is no truth. There's only your truth and my truth. And he's like, well, no, but there has to be a truth. We can have our views, we can have our opinions, but I mean, beyond cultural relativism, there is a desire to say there is no truth anymore.
And right, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful setup for my next anecdote. Maybe some of the viewers and listeners have heard it, but even if they have, it's worth hearing it again. And for those who've never heard it, fasten your seatbelts. So the reason why I call postmodernism the granddaddy of all idea pathogens is precisely because that's the root parasitic ideas from which all of the other parasitic ideas can flourish. If we can espouse the idea that there are absolutely no objective truths, then you're not constrained by your genitalia when it comes to your biological sex. Who are you to say what constitutes male or female? As the most recent addition to the Supreme Court, when she was being confirmed and asked, what is a woman? She said, well, I'm not a biologist. Well, until 15 minutes ago, the 117 billion people that had existed on Earth were perfectly able to navigate through the very complex conundrum of what constitutes male or female, but she wasn't able to say it.
Did you see the head of the International Olympic Committee?
Yes.
He was at a news conference, and of course there was all the debate about the women's boxing and were there biological males in it. They did not handle it well. They could have settled all the debate by being upfront and honest. So one of the journalists just asked a very relevant question. Will you handle this better next time? Will you find ways of talking to the public and being upfront with them so that there isn't this controversy around sex? And he said, there is no scientific way to determine what is a man and what is a woman. Absolutely. This is the head of one of our biggest global bodies.
Well, I was fortunate enough when I chose what I thought was a woman to start my family, and then we ended up having children. It's by the complete vagaries of stochastic life that I ended up, because I could have easily chosen a woman with a 9-inch penis to have children with, but luckily I came out on the right side. But just so that I don't leave your viewers and listeners hanging, can I go back to telling the story?
Go back to your story.
Yeah. So the best way to describe what a cancerous form of intellectual terrorism, postmodernism is, to your point about your colleagues who were saying, what is this? There is no objective truth. In 2002, one of my doctoral students had just defended his dissertation. So we were going out to celebrate. And have you heard this story before?
No.
Or no? Okay,
no,
so
no,
I'm glad, because it's always exciting when someone hears it for the first time. So we were going out for a celebratory dinner, myself, my wife, my doctoral student, and he was bringing a date with him. So a few hours before the date, before the dinner, he calls me up and he says, oh, I just wanted to give you a heads up that the lady that I'm bringing for the dinner is a graduate student in anthropology, postmodernism, and women's studies. And I said, okay, so the holy trinity of bullshit. And so, but of course, the reason why he was calling me to say this is like, please, can we not get into this big, I said, oh, no, I got you. I'm going to be on my best behavior. Mum's the word. I'm going to be good, which of course was a complete and utter lie, because about halfway through the evening, I turned to the lady and I say, oh, I hear that, you're a graduate student in postmodernism. Yes. Oh, so there are no objective truths, of course, other than the one objective truth that there are no objective truths, but never mind that internal cognitive inconsistency. Do you mind if I propose what I think are universal truths, and then we can discuss it and you can tell me how I'm wrong? She said, yes, go for it. Now, this is 2002, so this is way before the transgender stuff.
Yeah.
This is 22 years ago. I said, is it not true that within Homo sapiens, humans, that only women bear children? She looks at me, can't believe at what a simpleton I am, and says, that's absolutely not true. I said, oh, what do you mean? How is that? How is that? She goes, oh, because there is some Japanese tribe on some Japanese island whereby within their folkloric mythological realm, it is the men who bear the children. So by you restricting the conversation to the biological realm, that's how you keep us, whatever, barefoot and pregnant. So after I recovered from the mini stroke I had at listening to such gibberish, I then said, okay, well, you know what? Maybe it was too controversial, too incendiary for me to mention something as controversial as only women bear children. So let me give you another example, and then let's see if we can agree on this one. She goes, yeah, go for it. I said, is it not true since time immemorial that sailors have relied on the premise that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? And there she used a variant, Brian, of postmodernism. It's called deconstructionism. It's Jacques Derrida. Language creates reality. So she said, what do you mean by east and west? And what do you mean by the sun? That which you call the sun, I might call dancing hyena. Exact words. I said, well, fine. The dancing hyena rises in the east and sets in the west. She goes, I don't play those label games. Now that became known. It's now part of the lore of the internet, the dancing hyena story. Why do I always recount that story? Is because it perfectly captures what happens to a graduate student at a leading, arguably the leading Canadian university, who is parasitized by postmodernism. If she can't sit at a dinner and agree on the fact that women bear children and that there is such a thing as East and West and the sun, what can we do? Like, where can we go from there? It's a Darwinian epistemological dead end. There is no value to postmodernism, right? So that gives you a sense of why I wrote The Parasitic Mind, because yes, universities can be wonderful places, but they can also be where reason goes to die.
But okay, so these ideas start in the university.
Yes, sir.
They don't stay there. It's not like a bad weekend in Vegas. It doesn't stay in Vegas. It comes back with you like a venereal disease from Vegas, and it infects everybody. So talk about how that has an impact on the wider society, because Western liberal democracies, I think, we're going pretty well. We had elevated society, and now we seem to be going backwards. And so how do these ideas that infect the minds of just academics at the start undermine our entire society?
I love that you set up the question that way, because one of the most frequent blowback that I would receive early in my career, as I was standing on top of the mountain warning people, is, oh, come on, Dr. Saad, why are you exaggerating? So there is some esoteric department in the humanities that is promulgating these ideas. So what? It's not going to make it to medicine. It's not going to make it to mathematics. It's not going to make it to the business school. I said, no, exactly to your point. I said, the virus eventually breaks free from the lab, as we think we know with the lab leak theory of COVID. So yes, you're right that the dreadful parasitic idea starts off in some nonsensical department in the humanities, but it doesn't stay there. You know what it becomes eventually? It becomes the Prime Minister of Canada, right? So you're exactly right. Bad ideas don't have a geographical limitation. That's what makes them so dangerous. That's why I repeatedly say in my social media engagement, and earlier you mentioned Elon Musk, he completely agrees with me. We've had private conversations where we've confirmed this to each other, where there is nothing more dangerous on Earth than a parasitized mind. Yes, a tsunami can cause great devastation, but that's a, quote, act of God. But most of the tragedies that are imparted throughout human history start off with a bad idea, right? There's a little Austrian guy with a small mustache who said, "Hey, you know what the big problem in our culture is? It's the cancerous parasitic Jew. And if we only excise that from our society, then we will all live in a utopia." And a bunch of people said, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, Adolf." So to your point, that's why I stood up and kept screaming and screaming, because I knew that those ideas were going to eventually escape and become our journalists, our pop culture, our actors, our prime ministers. And so, yeah, that's what happens when bad ideas infect entire societies.